So as I'm reading the passage, I'm kind of reading back to myself. Maybe I read like 3 or 4 sentences and I give that 1 to 2 sentence summary in my mind. And that that helps me kind of not have to reread the whole section multiple times, and kind of make mental notes along the way of where certain arguments or information was located, so that when you're 2 or 3 questions in and it's referencing a certain section of the passage, I can think, okay, I know where that is. I now just have to reread, 2 or 3 lines in this section. I remember the context. On the DI section it's also one of the most forgiving in terms of the number of questions that you can get wrong and still score very well on. So I think the mindset that I had going into the exam especially was that I'm not going to sink too much time into a question if it's looking particularly hard to understand or complicated, because you can certainly take some strategic losses and still score very well. But one of the other strategies that I had was just make the test, each mock, feel like as much of the actual, be as representative of the actual exam as I could make it be. So I practiced it at the time I had my exam scheduled for. I practiced the section order that I knew I was going to take the actual test in. Just really wanting to build up that feeling of familiarity so that there were no surprises on the test day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another debrief session with me. My name is Dhruv. I'm one of the strategy experts and mentors here at e-GMAT. With me, I'm pleased to introduce today Morgan. Morgan recently scored a 665 with a wonderful and a mammoth V86, 97th percentile on verbal, which is a dream for many out there. He scored a DI 83, again, a 97th percentile score on DI, and a Q80. Morgan is here to share his GMAT journey with all the GMAT aspirants and discuss all the ups and downs, what worked in his favor and what didn't, and his learnings from this entire journey. So Morgan is here, and thank you so much, Morgan, for doing this. I really appreciate you coming out and willing to share your journey with all the GMAT aspirants here. So welcome. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Morgan. So Morgan, before we dive into your journey, just help all the viewers with a bit about your academic and professional background.
Sure. So for academics, I attended Eastern Connecticut State University, where I was a major in political science. And then I had attended the University of Connecticut, where I got my master's degree in public policy. I currently work as in the field of data and policy, specifically on finance issues.
Understood. So now that you mentioned that you work with data, I believe, day in, day out, which is why I think data insights came naturally to you. Would that be true to assume that?
Yes, I was very comfortable with a lot of the graphical analyses and table analyses questions. I think from the get-go, I think a little bit of practice certainly helped cement those skills, but just from my day-to-day office work, I think I had a level of comfort with those style of questions.
Understood. So Morgan, let's get into your GMAT journey, right? It's extremely important to understand the first step, which is to find out what is the right kind of course for you, right? Because different courses suit different needs. So I really want to understand from you your process of figuring out which course will suit you the best, and how did you end up at e-GMAT with us?
Yeah, so I did a lot of research on what I thought at reading, reviews on Reddit, reading reviews on GMAT Club, trying to understand what courses had worked for folks. Um, Early on in my GMAT journey, I felt like I had a decent grasp on the verbal section, and I was really looking for courses to help me improve some of my weaker areas in quant, any concepts that I hadn't covered in a while and needed to refresh myself on. And e-GMAT was pretty well rated for having a fairly rigorous quant section, so that I found that to be appealing to me.
Understood. Understood. So Morgan, let's begin with how things started, right? So I remember that you were starting at a decent verbal ability. You were starting at a V83. So and I think you're a native speaker of English language as well. So I think that also helps, right? But uh, I recently had an interview with a student, and he happened to mention that to go from the 90th percentile to the 93rd or the 94th percentile is easy, but to go from the 93rd to an or 92nd percentile to 95th plus percentile is something that is challenging, because then there is very less scope for improvement, and you really need to figure out which areas need improvement and how can you bridge those gaps. So what do you believe were the challenges that you were facing initially with verbal, despite being at a decent ability in verbal?
I think that based on my experience with the official material, I felt that I was at a pretty good place with reading comprehension. And I think a lot of that came from my professional background working in policy. I
Right.
read a lot of dense material, and I felt like that uh, had helped me be fairly strong in that. I definitely needed work on some of the forms of critical reasoning questions, particularly some of the inference style questions, as well as I think just making sure that the assumption style questions were also just more reliably. I could answer them more reliably.
Right. Understood. So when we speak about CR, you said RC was kind of a strength, right? But when we talk about CR, how do you think uh, did pre-thinking help you in becoming better and overcoming the challenges that you were already facing?
I think that pre-thinking was help useful. I think that getting an idea. I think for me the part about pre-thinking that helped the most is in order to pre-think correctly, you have to have really understood what exactly the
Yes.
question is asking you. And I personally felt that once I had a very firm grasp on what exactly the question stem was asking for and what was given, that finding the correct answer almost all of the time was fairly obvious. So I think that pre-thinking really helped me work on comprehending the question and the statement that was given, and I think that was very useful for me.
Understood. Uh, so Morgan, you mentioned that uh, I think RC was a strength, right? So since it was already your strength, I see that you still went through the RC course. What new did you learn, and do you think going through the course refined your approach? And if yes, then in what ways?
Um, I think it I think it was further good practice to do dense RC sections to not get intimidated by the length or the complexity of an RC question. So it helped me, I think, just feel a little bit more confident as I did some of those questions. And one of the things with RC is that they often blend critical reasoning topics
Yeah,
into RC style questions. So I just wanted to feel like I could effectively approach anything, either a critical reasoning, an inference style question from an RC passage versus an inference style question on a CR question. I would be able to do both well.
right. Uh, So what exactly was your strategy to go through an RC passage and solve it under 6 minutes or 7 minutes?
Yeah, so definitely I made a lot of verbal, or excuse me, mental summaries as I went through. So as I'm reading the passage, I'm kind of reading back to myself. Maybe I read like 3 or 4 sentences, and I give that 1 to 2 sentence summary in my mind, and that that helps me kind of not have to reread the whole section multiple times, and kind of make mental notes along the way of where certain arguments or information was located, so that when you're 2 or 3 questions in and it's referencing a certain section of the passage, I can think, okay, I know where that is. I now just have to reread, 2 or 3 lines in this section. I remember the context that that was mentioned in this section of the passage, and I think that was. I think without that, I'd be spending much longer on those questions.
Understood. All right. Speaking about the role of the Scholaranium, right? The quiz portal that we have. You did use it to quite your benefit, I believe. As you mentioned that a lot of things were additional practice for you, right? So what would you have to say about the quality of questions on Scholaranium, and how did you leverage those quizzes to your benefit?
Yeah. The question quality, I would say, is fairly high, and I would definitely say the difficulty is a level above the official questions in my experience, which is, I think, what I was really looking for. I wanted to feel as though I could confidently do harder questions, and that would leave me in a really good place when I took the actual exam. So I definitely think the question quality is high, and the diversity of all the concepts and the styles of question are present as well. And I think that's really important with the verbal section, especially to be comfortable reading different kinds of material and hearing arguments presented in different ways.
Right. Let's speak about your data insights subsection here. So as you've already mentioned that you come from the data background, so you deal with data every day, but you still go through a few parts of the course. What exactly were you looking for, and how do you think that those few parts of the course helped you become better with data insights?
Yeah, for sure. So what I was specifically looking for in the DI section was help with the two-part analysis style questions, um, because I think they made the least amount of sense to me out of this type of questions in the DI section. Um, and so I really wanted to, one, practice them, but two, get a really good understanding of what strategy I can use to approach a two-part analysis question. Because I felt like with the MSR questions, or graphical reasoning or table analysis, that everything I needed was right in front of me, and if I could access it
Mhm.
and understand it quickly enough, I would do well. But with two-part analysis, there's often you have to go a little bit deeper. You have to sometimes make some educated guesses or set up a
Right.
framework to use the answer choices to your advantage. And that was ultimately the strategy that I ended up learning from the course, which was, after you read and understand the question, I think building your strategy for approaching a two-part analysis question based off of the answer choices that are given is very important.
Right. Right. Morgan, a question that I believe a lot of GMAT aspirants nowadays have, especially after the introduction of data insights as a new section, is how do we manage to answer all 20 data insight questions without any time pressure? There have been a lot of time management strategies shared by a lot of other successful students. You've also scored a DI 83, but with a little different strategy. I would really like you to open up a little bit about that and help everyone understand as to how can they go through the DI section seamlessly without taking a lot of pressure and finish all the 20 questions and come out victorious.
Yeah, so I think what you said there is very key at the end without taking a lot of pressure. You have just a little over 2 minutes if you are attempting each question, but one of the things on the DI section is it's also one of the most forgiving in terms of the number of questions that you can get wrong and still score very well on. So I think the mindset that I had going into the exam, especially, was that I'm not going to sink too much time into a question if it's looking particularly hard to understand or complicated, because you can certainly take some strategic losses and still score very well
Yeah,
on DI. And I know that one of my strengths is my ability, I think, apart from the reading comprehension section, to sift through information quickly and uh, pull key things from it. So I did go into the tests, thinking, if I see a really bad multi-source reasoning section, I'm going to skip it. But when I got there, I looked at it and I said, this doesn't look that bad. I think I can do it. I attempted the whole thing and got all those questions right, and that worked for me. But I think for others, they might find that maybe their quant skills are better and they are more comfortable on the data sufficiency questions or the two-part analysis questions, and maybe they want to spend less time on MSR and focus in on those areas that they're stronger on. But I think you have to play to your strengths on the data insights section and make wise strategic choices while you're taking it, about not to get bogged down on any one question, because it is forgiving in the number you can get wrong if you're strong on enough of them.
right. All right. Now let's, I think, speak about quant, right? As I said, you were doing decently well on the course when it comes to quant. You had put in a lot of efforts to improve your quant ability. You were doing decently well on the mocks as well, right? So before we get into what happened on the test day, I really want to understand from you as to what were those areas that you refined while going through the quant course on the portal. Uh, what did you find the most helpful on the quant course?
Yeah, I think that a couple of the key skills. So I guess I'll start. I'll back up and do a little bit more from a conceptual perspective. I definitely needed more of a conceptual review on some of the algebra topics, which was just helpful to kind of do those from the ground up
Yeah,
and learn them again, which I think was very useful. Um, but in terms of direct skills, I think one of the areas that I struggled with on quant was often question translation, and sometimes, especially on the word problem section. So having a lot of practice converting the math to English, English to math was very helpful for me. And I think that I felt fairly confident that I can do the math if I can just understand what the question is trying to get me to do. So I think that's where a lot of that work went into.
understood. Mohan, what I'm trying to look over here for is that another evidence that you were really doing well and on point and you were really diligent is that you look at your pace savings, okay, pace time savings. It's not less than 11 hours for any of the quant courses. I'm not sure if you realize this or not, but you ended up saving more than 40 hours using the pace engine,
Hmm.
right? Uh, so would you like to just shed some light on how did the pace engine work and how did that help you?
Yeah, so I mean, the pace engine will basically tell you if you have a basic understanding of the concept. If you have a basic understanding of the concept, you don't need to spend time digging into, the from the ground up,
Right.
fundamentals of the concept, and you can move on to doing some of the more advanced questions and applying the concept in trickier environments. So I think that if you know your basics, the pace engine will, say you seem to have a pretty good handle on this, and you can move on to doing, the more challenging stuff.
Understood. So, I mean, kudos to you on that because you did really well on the course. And now we come to the question as to after putting in the number of hours, the efforts, and we've seen grades there. They were majorly A grades, indicating that you were on the right track. What do you think did not go your way on the test day?
I think a couple of the things that went wrong, at least that I knew when I encountered them on the test day. I knew I encountered a question early on. I think it was like I mentioned previously, the seventh question. Um, that was just in a format that was new to me. So I was trying my best to work my way through it. But after 2 minutes, I spent 2 minutes on it trying to suss out a solution, and I just didn't think I was getting there. So at that point, I think one of the things you have to do on the GMAT is make strategic calls and move on. And so at that point, I said, all right, this question got me. I'm guessing and moving on. I definitely encountered a nasty algebra question a little bit later on that I think with more time I could have done, but in the test setting, when there's a little bit more of the adrenaline going and you're trying to be quick and effective there, I think I was able to manage at that time. But uh, yeah, otherwise I think there were maybe a few questions also that I may have made mistakes on that I didn't catch that got me, especially towards the end uh, of the exam. I was feeling confident, but I don't think that I saw the mistakes that I had made.
Understood. All right. Uh, let's go to your mock journey now, Morgan. Mock journey is an altogether a different journey from the entire subsectional pathway, because when you're going through subsections, you're learning one thing at a time, but when you come to mock, it's time to put everything that you've learned together in those 2.5 hours and try, as you rightly mentioned a couple of times, make those strategic calls as well about what to do, when to skip a question, how long to stick to a question, etc., etc. What kind of scores were you achieving on the mock journey?
Yeah, so on my mocks, I was really scoring between 645 to 695 uh, on the mocks. So I think based on what I've read, there's usually a decent amount of variance in your mock scores, and I definitely had some variance. I think that uh, before my exam, I was scoring 675 around on the mocks, and uh, so that's where I had ended up before I was taking the test.
Right. And what would you do between two mocks uh, uh, to try and see an improvement in the next one?
Yeah, so I think that I built an error log at least for quant out of every mock test as well. I wanted to make sure that I thoroughly understood every question that I got wrong, to try and not repeat that mistake in the future. But one of the other strategies that I had was just uh, make the test, each mock, feel like as much of the actual, be as representative of the actual exam as I could
Yeah.
make it be. So I practiced it at the time I had my exam, scheduled for, I practiced the section order that I knew I was going to take the actual test in. Just really wanting to build up that feeling of familiarity so that there were no surprises on the test day.
And now that we're talking about the test day, uh, just if you can just take us through your test experience as to how did the day start, what did you do, how did the test center feel like, any advice and tips on what to do on the test day in the test center to make sure that you have a seamless experience?
Yeah, I mean, definitely get a good night's sleep before your test day. I think that's very critical. Um, and uh, definitely schedule your test at a time where you feel like you are at your sharpest. So if you're a morning person, take your test in the morning. If you're an afternoon person, take it in the afternoon. Um, and for me, I got to the test center definitely early, well before my exam started, and I did some breathing exercises in the car to make sure that I was staying calm, and I did a couple warm up verbal and quant questions also right before I walked in, just to make sure that I was in that problem solving mindset. And otherwise, I think you understand that you're going to lose some time at the test center. If you take your 10-minute break, you're going to lose time checking in and out of the exam. So it might feel a little shorter than what you did on your mocks, but I would just say stay calm and make sure that you watch the clock and yeah, just give it your best.
Okay, all right. So Morgan, with this, we come to the end of this session. We discussed your journey, and I'm again really thankful to you for uh, coming here on this session and sharing your insights with everybody out there, because one extremely important thing that one needs to do well on the GMAT is motivation and inspiration. And when people like you choose to come on the debrief session and share their journey, you are giving it back to the society that probably gave you a lot of motivation and inspiration when you were looking for it, right? So thank you so much for being so honest and candid. We wish you all the best for the next steps. Uh, any last words for the GMAT aspirants?
I would just say that studying for the GMAT is a journey, and it is a very it can be quite an intense exam. And if you stay resilient and dedicated, and make sure that you intentionally put in the time every day, you will see improvement.
All right. Thank you for your words, Morgan. As I said, with this, we end this session now. Again, thanks a lot for doing this with us. We wish you all the best, and keep us posted about the next steps, and we'll be happy to help you in whichever way we can.
Okay, thank you. Nice talking to you.
Same here.
And thank you for